that might look better for the live stream. Hi, everyone. So I think we're going to get started. It's 4:35. It's 4:34, starting 4 minutes late. So let's get started with a prayer. Lord, we thank you so much just for such a beautiful day. God, you are so good. I just want to pray and ask, Lord, that you will help me with this presentation, and that you'll speak for me, and that the information will be powerful and have a powerful impact on everyone who's listening, and that you'll help us to be consistent in the changes that we're trying to make and making in our health. We say these things in Jesus' name, amen. You know, I love the Bible verse that says that with the Lord all things are possible. And one of the things that's possible with the Lord is making health changes. And sometimes we want to make a health change, but we find it difficult or challenging. But I just want to remind everyone that that Bible verse says that with the Lord all things are possible. Therefore, making changes in your health or being consistent in changes in your health, which is what is often the problem or the challenge, let's say, therefore is possible. Amen. And with the Lord, actually the Holy Spirit really helps us to see what we need to see. So today I actually was going to do a presentation. FYI, I've kind of changed the subject. I was going to do a presentation mostly on mostly on having a more healthy relationship with food and touching on weight loss, which I'll talk about a little bit. But this afternoon, between the sermon and maybe about an hour ago, I just felt so impressed to do a presentation on all areas of health, including digestion. So we are going to be looking at many different areas of health, covering kind of the 8 laws of health, and we'll touch a little bit on having a healthier relationship with food and weight loss, but we'll do an overall kind of beginning to end kind of presentation instead. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so let's get started. So if anybody is making changes in their health at all, I would like you to remember this. If you're making changes to your health, you are on a new road. Remember, it begins with your thinking. It begins with your thinking. Some people say it begins with your nutrition. I would say congratulations on any lifestyle changes that you're making. You're on the right road. When I say it begins with your thinking, meaning you could think, you know what, I've already tried everything. I've been trying to eat better, or I've been trying to exercise more, or I've been trying whatever it is for years and I'm never quite making it. Or if you're trying to lose weight, you know, I've tried everything, nothing works for me. Part of our thinking process affects our body, which is now shown and popular in science, just that the brain affects the body affects the brain, etc. So in changing your thinking, you know what? It's possible. It's possible for me to make changes. It's possible for me to heal. It's possible for me to get better. It's possible for me to be consistent. That's why I say part of the new road begins with your thinking. And the next part of the new road begins with your doing. So I've heard of a scripture verse that says we should not just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And I would say this applies to health as well. Not just hearing about things, but also implementing and doing. I remember hearing a popular phrase, knowledge is power, which I would say it's not true, because it's the application of knowledge which brings power into your life and changes into your life. So let's apply, and I'm speaking to myself, let's apply what we know and what we learn. So we're going to start with nutrition. Nutrition. I'll start with just recommending and talking a little bit about sugar. And when we talk about removing sugar from our diet, people are often thinking of chocolate bars or candies or desserts. But instead, I mean, removing that, that's fantastic. Removing the blatant sugars that we're eating. Why? Because sugar actually causes inflammation in the body. Because sugar actually sets off a dopaminergic system in our brains, where our brain releases a lot of dopamine when we have sugar, and then we kind of get hooked on sugar, and it begins to drive our behavior. Sugar also creates cravings, and sugar can raise cortisol levels. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and when cortisol is high, our inflammation levels are high, but also our immune system is not working as well as we want it to. So overall, sugar can affect immunity. So when I say sugar, people are thinking of chocolate cake, ice cream, fudge, pies, etc. But I would recommend that you take it a step further, because there's so much hidden sugar in the processed foods today. So a way of actually getting past that is avoid processed foods as much as possible. I would say that's the first step to better health and better nutrition, avoiding processed foods. So you want to go for no label foods, except maybe the sticky label that's on an apple that has the barcode on it. But aside from that, no foods that come in a crinkly bag or in a box, because a lot of those foods are very high in sugar. They're very high in sodium as well. And on the front, they might say gluten-free, low fat, etc. But the truth is that it's on the back. So first step towards health is becoming a really strong reader. When I was a little girl, actually, my dad implemented a reading program with me. The reading program, my mom's here, I don't know if she knows. The reading program was we had to read a book a week, one book per week. At the end of the week, I had to give a verbal book report. And I wasn't allowed to go out and play that day unless I gave the verbal book report. He'd give me the okay. And then I was on to the next book, one book a week. So I became a reader. So I would suggest to you something like using my dad's methods. When you go into the grocery store, you can think of it as I'm going into a nutrition library. I'm there to read. The front label is what draws you in. With the big print, it tells you the marketing story that maybe the food company wants you to buy. But the small print on the back is what's going to tell you the truth. And when you look at the small print on the back, you will realize there's hidden sugar in crackers, hidden sugar in ketchup, hidden sugar in bread. A lot of the breads have sugar in them. Hidden sugar in yogurt, hidden sugar in cereal, nearly anything, crackers, nearly anything processed has hidden sugars in it or different names for sugar, because people are catching on now that if it says sugar, I'm not going to buy it. So instead it might say, of course, everyone knows high fructose corn syrup, but it might say brown rice syrup. And people think, oh, they see brown rice, so they're going to buy that. But really, in the body, it is converted into glucose. So whether it is brown rice syrup, or there's another one that's really popular right now, it's got more of a Latin name, turbinado, I think, or it's cane sugar or white sugar. Of course, with white sugar, bleach, so there are other toxicities involved. But the body just converts it into glucose. So you want to avoid processed foods, avoid hidden sugars. I would say that's a perfect start. How do we avoid processed foods? You ask yourself, when you're about to buy that product, right before you grab it and you're at the grocery store, stop. Say to yourself, wait a second, is this real food? Because we've become so accustomed to buying things out of boxes. Sometimes I ask myself, I've caught myself going, what am I really eating? Like, what is this thing that I'm about to put in my body, which was created somewhere in a factory? So you could say, is this real food? If it is real food, what tree did it fall off of? Or what bush did it grow on? Was it dug up from the ground? If the answer is didn't fall off of a tree, didn't come out of a bush, wasn't dug up from the ground, then you may consider putting it back. Of course, these are lifestyle changes, so it takes a little while. That's why I started with all things are possible with the Lord, because you might be hooked on potato chips, or you might really like them, and it'll take a while before you stop buying them at the grocery store. But one of the things you can do, number one, you can write a list when you're going grocery shopping. Number two, and most people know this, don't go to the grocery store hungry. Oh, recipe for disaster. You're going to end up buying all sorts of things you didn't want to buy. And number three, when you go into the grocery store, go in and then go to the furthest aisles. So you're going towards the produce section, or you might even go to the frozen fruits section if you're making smoothies or something like that. Avoid the middle aisles. Those are like the danger no-nos, the no-no zone, because that's where a lot of the processed food is, and that food is normally high in hidden sugars. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So I said you want to eat no-label foods and avoid processed foods. What does that mean? It means you're eating foods that are plant-based, meaning in their original form. What does that mean? It would mean that you're eating potatoes instead of potato chips. You might choose corn, which we had today, which was amazing, corn instead of corn chips. And I could go on like that. You're eating raspberries instead of raspberry ice cream, etc., etc. So eat the original food and not what has been created in a factory. That is actually an incredible first step towards better nutrition. Avoiding the sugars, eating plant-based foods, eating foods in their original form, and then the tips of reading a lot when you go to the grocery store. Go to the far aisles, get your produce first. And then if you have to, if you dare, then enter into the danger zone where all the processed food is. But only get what's on your list. Don't go hungry. If we're talking about nutrition, it's interesting because that saying, you are what you eat, is actually, I would say, incorrect. The actual saying, at least in terms of health, because you are what you eat is kind of like a slogan saying to promote better health and better nutrition. But if nutrition and increasing nutrition for health is your goal, then that is completely wrong. And you're probably saying, but Dr. Plummer, what do you mean it's wrong? We just talked about better nutrition. The truth is that for health, the slogan would be, you are what you absorb. You are what you absorb. So first, yes, you want to make the better choices with the foods that you're eating, the foods that you're picking, buying, eating. But if you are not absorbing those foods, meaning that you have a healthy gut lining, healthy digestive process, you're getting all the nutrients out of the food, and then your personal waste system is working properly, then you're not going to get the benefit from the food. So you can keep that in mind. I am not necessarily what I eat. I am what I absorb. Therefore, knowing a few tips for better digestion and better absorption can be very helpful. So these are my tips for better digestion. Just as I said at the very beginning of this presentation, it starts with your thinking. But really, it's starting more with your mindset. The mindset is the beginning of better digestion. Rest and digest. Why do I say rest and digest? When our bodies are in a rest and digest state, then our bodies are in a parasympathetic nervous system state. When we are in a fight or flight state, which is basically a state of stress, anxiety, we're thinking about things, our body shifts into fight or flight, which is also called the sympathetic nervous system. When we're in fight or flight and stressed, then we're not going to digest our food better, or even digest it really well. Why? Because when we're in fight or flight, we're getting ready to run away from something or fight something, but maybe what you're running away from or fighting is only in your mind. It might be psychological. It's not like a physiological moose or animal ran into your kitchen. It's something that you feel is threatening. And if you sit down to eat and you're in that state, you will not digest your food well. There's not a lot of blood in that area. In fight or flight, the blood is pushed to the hands, the feet, the arms, the legs, because you're getting ready to run away or fight. Your digestive enzymes are going to be low. The secretion of bile from the gallbladder is not going to be as effective. Hydrochloric acid in the stomach, the levels won't be where they need to be. The pancreatic enzymes are going to be sluggish. So everything that's involved in digestion is kind of put on hold when you're stressed out or you're feeling stress. So this is why I say, and this is only tip 1, the right mindset is the beginning of better digestion and absorption. You want to be nice and calm and relaxed before you eat. This is called rest and digest. You're in a state of rest and getting ready to digest. Okay, how do you get in a state of rest so you're ready to digest and absorb your food? Number 1, you pray. As Christians, a lot of Christians pray before they eat. Well, the amazing thing that I realized when I became a naturopathic doctor after seminary, I realized that a lot of the things that we learned in naturopathic medicine are actually already in the Bible. But I just learned the physiological or biochemical reasons why. Praying before you eat, a practice that Jesus did, a practice that we do. Praying shifts your brain from a fight or flight state into a parasympathetic nervous system state. It changes your nervous system. Now you're in rest and digest. Isn't that amazing? Or you can pray and take a few moments to breathe intentionally before eating. You could express thankfulness before eating. Gratitude studies show that gratitude shifts our nervous system out of stress and into rest. So breathing slows down your heart rate, breathing the right way, meaning your exhalation is longer than your inhalation. So before you eat, pray, breathe, make sure your exhalation is longer. If your exhalation is shorter and inhalation is longer, you actually shift your nervous system into stress, fight or flight. So you want a long exhalation, pray, say thanks, then eat. Now your nervous system is in a rested state. All of those digestive juices that I talked about, they're going to be flowing. You're ready to eat. Does that make sense? It's such a small thing, but so important. Number 2, no snacking between meals. You want to wait 4 to 5 hours between meals and definitely go light at night. Light at night. What does this mean? It means you might have a big breakfast, somewhat big. You have a big lunch. The biggest meal of the day is your lunch. And then if you're eating dinner, it would be very light. It might be a soup. It might be a salad. It could be a detox juice. But do not make dinner your heaviest meal. That's a lot of digestion that has to happen and calories that need to be burned before you go to bed. It can also lead to acid reflux. People eat a big dinner, then they lie down, and then the hydrochloric acid from the stomach is mechanically pushed up the esophagus. Then they get GERD or heartburn before bed. So make lunch your largest meal. 4 to 5 hours between meals. Usually at about the 5-hour point, people get, fairly ravenous. So you might target 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours between meals. This gives your body time to really begin processing and digesting the food before you put more food in. Tip number 3, and remember that light at night. And light at night is becoming popular now with intermittent fasting. But intermittent fasting basically means, and we grew up with this rule, after dinner, you don't eat anymore. It's like after dinner, the kitchen's closed, and you don't eat again until breakfast. It's now called intermittent fasting, but when I was growing up, it was just called dinner and then not eating until breakfast. So you want to give your body that opportunity to really digest and fast. And if you go through a fasting period of approximately 16 hours, so let's say you eat your dinner at 5:30 and then you don't eat again until the following morning at about 9. Is that 8 hours? 9 and 8, 17, 5 o'clock? Okay. So that's about 16.5 hours. So you're finishing dinner at 5:30. You eat again the next morning at 9. You've actually fasted, or just not eaten, for 16 to 16 and a half hours. It allows your body to begin a process called autophagy. Autophagy. Autophagy is auto, as in self, phagy, as in eating. It helps your body to eat away at tissue, etc., that's no longer needed. Your body cleans itself up, basically, if you allow it for that time where you're not eating. So light at night, very important. Number 3, slow it down. Slow it down. Eat slowly. Keep chewing until the consistency is like applesauce. I actually at one point worked at a health center, a Chinese medicine health center in China, and this was one of the rules. And I'd never heard that before. This is like over 20 years ago. And the Chinese medicine doctor said you want to eat until it's like a big, let's say a lot of saliva, just saliva only in your mouth. And I was like, oh, that's, like I would take about 3 bites and swallow. And he would watch us. His name was Dr. Liu. He would watch us eating and stand there and watch us chew. Keep chewing, Nadine, keep chewing. I'd be like, oh my goodness. But then I started to study it, and I realized that there's a lot of science behind it. Eat slowly, don't swallow until the consistency is like applesauce. I'll start with the consistency. In our saliva, we have an enzyme called salivary amylase. Salivary amylase is antimicrobial, so it's like an antibacterial enzyme. It kills all the bacteria on the food, and it also helps to break down carbohydrates. What does that mean? It means your saliva is attacking the food, and the enzyme in the saliva is starting the digestion process in your mouth. The carbohydrates are being broken down, and carbohydrates are broken down into glucose. And therefore, you're going to actually digest your carbohydrates better if you leave the food in your mouth for a while until it's like applesauce. And the saliva has really mixed with the food. So it makes sense. Why eat slowly? It takes a little while for your brain and your body to actually understand that you're starting to feel full. First of all, if you're eating slowly, you're probably chewing longer, so the food's in your mouth longer, and the saliva is attacking it. But on top of that, once we start eating and our stomach begins stretching, we have stretch receptors in the stomach. We're only on point number 3, and I'm looking at the time. But we have stretch receptors in our stomach. Once we are eating to the point where those receptors are being stretched, a signal is sent to the brain to say, hey, the stomach's stretching, because naturally you don't want to eat. The stomach's like a pouch. It does have a muscular layer, but God has designed us in a way where the pouch isn't going to burst. You've eaten so much that you burst your stomach. So stretch receptors send a signal to the brain, hey, this person's stomach, the stomach is beginning to stretch. This triggers the release of a hormone from the fat cells, which is called leptin. Leptin is the fullness hormone. So a lot of leptin then is secreted, flowing through our bodies, through the bloodstream, and then you feel full. This entire process takes about 20 minutes. So if you're eating quickly, you're probably not going to digest your food really well. You're not breaking down the carbohydrates in the mouth because saliva is not attacking the food. Maybe you'll miss out on some of the antibacterial properties, and you're probably going to eat more than your body really needs. So there's so many things involved in just those 2 things. So slow it down. Number 4, if you can't slow it down, then put your fork or your spoon down to slow down your eating if needed, meaning I call this taking a pause. I can't say this was originally my idea because it was also at the Chinese Medicine Health Center where in the middle of eating we had to put it was chopsticks, but you put your utensil down and wait, and then eat again, and then wait, to kind of train us to eat slower. So put your fork or spoon down to slow down your eating. Number 5, be careful what you're talking about while you're eating. Do not discuss contentious things during mealtime. Why? Because stress causes poor digestion. So often people think, oh, we're all at the table. This is the perfect time to bring up the elephant in the room, or that thing that we've been quietly, passive-aggressively fighting about for the week, because everybody's here. Worst time to talk about it. Everybody's going to get stressed. Stress puts your body into fight or flight, and then you don't digest your food properly. So talk about pleasant things during mealtime. Wait to talk about the stressful things, preferably, I don't know, in the morning might be a good time. Or maybe during a digestive walk. After you've eaten, you go for a walk together. Maybe then. Don't talk about it before bedtime either. It's going to cause insomnia, poor sleep onset. So morning might be a better time. Number 6, wait 15 minutes and then go for a walk after eating. So we call this a digestive walk. And I like that saying that motion creates motion. Basically, movement helps with digestion, but it also helps with bowel movements as well. So going for a walk in the morning. And when we're going for that walk, it stops you from sitting down or taking a nap after eating, something like that, which can lead to heartburn. Number 7, as I said, do not lie down after eating. It's really interesting because between the stomach and the esophagus, there's a little, it's like a little gate. It's actually a sphincter called the lower esophageal sphincter, the LES. And it's like the gate that sits near the top of the stomach that stops the hydrochloric acid in the stomach from bubbling up and getting into the esophagus. But when we lie down right after eating, so when you're eating, then the food that drops into the stomach is being attacked by the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, which is also antimicrobial. So even if you didn't catch it with the saliva in the mouth, then the acid in the stomach is going to hopefully kill the microbes and on the food. But basically, when you lie down, you can imagine then there's a lot of pressure against that little gate, that sphincter. And all of that hydrochloric acid is working away at the food. And if the hydrochloric acid gets a little bit high and there's pressure against the sphincter, it's going to go up the esophagus. And you're lying down and you feel it here in your chest and you have heartburn. So do not lie down after eating. Instead, go for that 15-minute digestive walk. Number 8, eat until you are 2/3 full. When I was overweight, maybe up to 50 or 60 pounds heavier than I am now, this was a real tough one for me because I was accustomed to eating until I was really, really full. Like if I didn't feel 100% full, then it meant that I hadn't finished eating. Like I had to keep eating. And when I started practicing this, eating until you're 2/3 full, it felt like I was finishing the meal prematurely. But there's still space. But I can fit some more in my stomach. But we don't necessarily need that much food. So eating until you're 2/3 full, because it's quite possible that your stomach is actually stretching, but you don't know it because that whole process of the signal being sent to the brain and leptin being secreted takes a little bit of time. So eat until you are 2/3 full. And this way your body doesn't have to work as hard, and you will get that feeling like, ooh, I am full, but it's going to take a little longer, maybe 20 minutes or so. Number 9, do not drink while eating. It's interesting, I've continued to look for studies on this, but this is a basic Seventh-day Adventist principle. Do not drink while eating. As I mentioned, the saliva has an enzyme in it, the amylase in the saliva that breaks down the food. The stomach has an acid in it, hydrochloric acid, that breaks down the protein. And then bile secretion happens, and that helps to break down the fat. The pancreas releases enzymes that help with digestion. So when the food's in the mouth, instead of chewing and chewing and chewing, we just take some water, gulp it down, then we didn't give the amylase in the saliva an opportunity to start digesting the food. And on top of that, we might actually be decreasing some of the other enzymes or enzymatic action with the water or with whatever you're drinking. So instead, you want to drink before your meal, and you can even drink after your meal. But you want to wait, usually I say 45 minutes before your meal. That's the time where you cut off all liquids. Eat your meal, and then you want to wait again, same kind of thing like the other side of the coin, 40 to 45 minutes after eating. If you have to, then you can start maybe drinking some water. But give yourself that time. And combine this rule with the chewing rule. So yes, I'm not eating with my meal, but for some people, they find it hard to do this because they might feel like their mouth is dry the whole time they're eating. So they might practice this for a little while and then go back to drinking while they're eating. Chew your food, keep chewing, 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 and then when the saliva is flowing, you won't feel as thirsty while you're eating. So give that time before and time after. Okay, those are my tips for digestion, but I want to stress this tip. You've got them, let's use them. Chew, 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 chew. Keep chewing your food. And we have salivary glands. We have 4 different types of salivary glands. We have a very large salivary gland here on the other side of our cheek in the buccal membrane called the parotid gland. So it's not an issue with not having enough saliva. It's more you didn't leave it in your mouth long enough for all of the salivary secretions to really be flowing. So you've got them, let's use them. A lot of people now are going plant-based. And just a note on nutrition, because we're still on nutrition, digestion, what foods to eat. And many people think, okay, if I go plant-based, I'm going to be healthier. But there's a healthy way of going plant-based, or let's say vegan, and then there's an unhealthy way of going vegan. And this is the unhealthy way. You'll notice that each one of these things is vegan. Well, that top one, it looks like ice cream, but it's vegan ice cream. French fries are vegan. That's a vegan cake. Potato chips are vegan. That's a vegan cheesecake. Pasta is vegan. Did you know Oreo cookies are vegan? So you can give up meat and animal products, but still be unhealthy. Instead, you could say, yay, I've given up meat, but now I'm a carbo-sugartarian. A carbo-sugartarian. And no, I don't like fruit and vegetables. I eat these things as well. So the focus is, yes, it's on giving up meat and animal products, but the focus is on eating more fruits and vegetables and eating more of a plant-based meal and plant-based foods. And as I said at the beginning, avoiding processed foods. So some of these things like the vegan cookies or vegan burgers, those are still processed. And a lot of them are high in sodium and high in preservatives and high in chemicals. So as much as possible, you want to go for natural foods. Does that make sense? So vegan does not guarantee health. Okay, let's move on to exercise. This section won't be as long. Exercise. Brisk walking is your best exercise. The Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation recommends 150 minutes of exercise per week. This girl is not brisk walking, and this fellow is brisk walking. So what is brisk walking? Brisk walking doesn't just mean going outside. Brisk walking means that you're walking to the point where you can still have a conversation, but you're pushing yourself a little bit. So there's a study done on dog walkers. What they found with the dog walker study is that people who have dogs actually usually get more exercise than people who don't have dogs. But can I ask you, was this you giving your dog some exercise in the morning? So if you have a dog, instead of just letting your dog out or leaving your dog to go and exercise, go exercise with your dog. It is a great trigger to get you out of there and out of the house. And when you're walking, I know the dog may have to stop, but you want a brisk walk with your dog. And it's nice to have the companionship, but don't send him out there to exercise without you. Doing the least amount of effort does not pay off. So when it comes to exercise, as I said, brisk walking might be the best exercise, the least possibility for injury. I mean, if you like other exercises, that is great, but you want to exercise and avoid injury. So it's brisk walking. I recommend brisk walking or swimming. They're both fantastic, good cardiovascular health. Swimming's great for your joints. If you have a history of injury, swimming doesn't normally aggravate an injury. But with exercise, some people say, well, you know what? I exercised twice last week and I still feel the same. And that's not enough. Or I exercise once a week. That's great, but you're not quite hitting 150 minutes. So what I find with exercise is you get out of exercise what you put in to exercise. So you want to go beyond the concept of exercise. You get out what you put in. Doing the least amount when it comes to exercise does not pay off. Let's move on to water, and I'm actually going to drink some water in a moment here. I have a lot of information about water because water is key, one of the keys to health. And there's so many things about water that we don't realize. And I myself need to work on drinking more water. Did you know that up to 60% of the human adult body is water? The brain and heart are composed of 73% water. If anyone has any water, this is a good time to take a sip. That wasn't too much. The lungs are about 83% water. I don't want to spill the water on my computer. The skin contains 64% water. Muscles and kidneys, 79% water. Even your bones are watery. Even your bones have 31% water. This is according to the H.H. Mitchell Journal of Biological Chemistry, page 158. Did you know that water is needed by the brain to manufacture hormones and neurotransmitters? Some of the most common neurotransmitters that people know about are serotonin, dopamine, melatonin, etc. Serotonin is known as the happiness hormone. And it's interesting because water is needed to manufacture those hormones. Therefore, that means that water can affect mood. And we don't normally put water and mood or water and serotonin together. Water regulates the body temperature for sweating and respiration, acts as a shock absorber for the brain and spinal cord. Your brain and spinal cord are actually kind of ongoingly lubricated by cerebrospinal fluid. And your brain is in a bit of a kind of like a sac, and it's surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid. Ugh. I need more water. I think that's what it is. So water acts as a shock absorber for your brain and your spinal cord. Water helps with the conversion of food to components needed for survival, for digestion. Water helps delivery of oxygen all over the body. As I've said, water helps to form saliva. So if you suffer from dry mouth, one of the key reasons is they don't drink enough water. Another one is it's often a side effect of medications. A third one is dry mouth is common as a symptom or cofactor in anxiety. But if you do suffer from dry mouth or experience dry mouth, you might ask yourself, am I drinking enough water? Water keeps the mucosal membranes moist, meaning the membranes of the nose, even the membrane of the lungs. It's interesting because our lungs are actually kind of wrapped with something called a pleural lining. You could think of it as your lungs being wrapped with plastic wrap. I know plastic's like a faux pas word, but saran wrap. And between the lungs and the saran wrap, there's a tiny little space, and it's filled with fluid called the pleural fluid. And in that fluid is water. So it's possible if you're having lung issues, I'm not saying this is like the remedy, but you could ask yourself, am I drinking enough water? Water allows the body's cells to grow, reproduce, and survive. It flushes the body's waste, mainly in urine, but it also helps with flushing out waste when we're going to the bathroom, number 2. So if you suffer from constipation, then you might ask yourself, did I drink enough water, or do I habitually drink enough water? Water helps to lubricate our joints. Our joints are actually surrounded by a type of fluid in the joint cavity called synovial fluid. And so your joints need a lot of lubrication, and part of that lubricant, synovial fluid, is water. Water is the major component of most body parts. The skin is the body's first line of defense against bacteria and other invaders that can harm you. So our skin actually has a wonderful layer of friendly bacteria that kind of protects us from unfriendly bacteria. The skin produces sweat, which wards off harmful airborne bacteria. This is the reason why when it comes to hand sanitizers, and I won't say too much about that, but I just want to say be careful about not overdoing it with the hand sanitizer. I'm not saying don't use it, but don't overdo it. Why? Because you have this protective layer on the skin of friendly bacteria, and too much hand sanitizer could actually kill that friendly protective bacteria. The skin cannot produce sweat when the body's dehydrated. On top of that, when your skin gets too dry, then you get cracks, and then bacteria can actually get in. There's also a decline in the mucus that's produced in the mouth, the nose, and lungs, which prevents other harmful entities from getting into the body. The skin has a natural microbiome. That's what I'm talking about. Friendly bacteria, friendly flora that helps to protect against external bacteria. So we want to drink water so our skin's well hydrated. According to the International Dermal Institute, dryness and dehydration are precursors to sensitized skin. What is sensitized skin? So sensitized skin is skin that becomes irritated, red, itchy. And this could be because of dehydration. Dehydrated skin can become more sensitive. Irritants like bacteria, pollution can penetrate the layer of our skin and aggravate these symptoms. By drinking water, you not only hydrate the skin, but you also provide your body with that fuel to make sweat and mucus that you need to boost immunity. So you might ask yourself, okay, we've been talking about water, but the big question is how much water? So this is according to the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. They determined that an adequate daily fluid intake is this: about 15.5 cups, meaning 3.7 liters of fluids for men, and about 11.5 cups, 2.7 liters of fluids a day for women. But this isn't pure water. So this could be an herbal tea as well. This is fluids, not water only. So this is where I get the numbers that I recommend for men and women from this quote and study. So instead, for men, I normally say around 2.5 liters of water to the upper limit of 3, and for women, 2 liters of water to the upper limit of maybe 2 or 2.5 liters of water. Dr. Michael Greger recently put out a great video. He is a medical doctor who is plant-based, who wrote a book called How Not to Diet, and also wrote a book called How Not to Die. And he has a few great videos about water and why drink water without anything in it, because the way the osmolarity of the water is affected when you add an herbal tea, etc. So I don't necessarily include those as water intake, but you can look him up and look up his videos. He's got amazing information. Okay, water. It is a whirlpool of wonder, isn't it? I'm leaving it there long enough so you see the awesome whirlpool that I had. Let's talk about sunshine. We are so lucky, or so blessed, let's say, that today is a beautiful sunny day. But there are things about sunshine that people don't realize. One of those things is that sunshine can have such a strong impact on our mood and on our energy levels. Most people feel happier or more energetic or brighter in the summertime. They're getting more vitamin D. They've done studies on low vitamin D. They've found it's associated with low mood and low energy. So, if you have the opportunity to, go outside and get some sunshine. It's interesting because sunshine can affect us in different ways. Unfortunately, right now, we can't go outside in t-shirts, so that the vitamin D is actually hitting our skin and then being, converted through the skin, and then we are actually getting dosing of vitamin D through the sun. When you're wearing a lot of clothes, that doesn't happen as much. However, if you go outside first thing in the morning at sunrise, okay, it might not look like this. You might have a winter jacket on instead. But first thing in the morning at sunrise, and you look at the sun first thing in the morning, even if it's cloudy, just looking at the sun will set the body's physiological clock. It's called your circadian rhythm for the entire day. What does that mean? It means that melatonin, which is secreted during the nighttime, is going to be cut off. Suddenly your energy level is going to go higher. Cortisol level is going to go high. Cortisol is like an energy hormone. It's secreted during fight or flight. You want high cortisol during the day. You want low cortisol at night. People who suffer from insomnia usually have low cortisol in the morning, high cortisol at night, and because that hormone is high, they cannot fall asleep. So if that is an issue for you, you might try going outside, looking at the sunrise. I'm not sure if I said sunset, but look at the sunrise first thing in the morning. About 20 minutes of light first thing in the morning can set your body's clock for the entire day, can improve sleep at night. Isn't that amazing? It's free, it's natural. Even if you can't see the sun and the cloud's there, we know the sun is there behind the cloud, so it's the same kind of thing. It won't work if you're wearing sunglasses. You want the sun to hit the retina, because when it hits the retina, it sends a signal to an area in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sends a signal to a gland called the pineal gland. The pineal gland then stops secreting melatonin, and you begin producing more serotonin. So even in the wintertime, you can benefit from sunshine. So go outside first thing in the morning at sunrise. Sunshine makes a huge difference. And as I said, even if you're wearing a coat, go out, get some fresh air, and experience the sun in any season. What can help with depression? They have found in studies that sunshine can help with depression, or you could say vitamin D supplementation. Because vitamin D, if you're taking it in a supplement form, and I won't talk about the actual amounts, you can do some research on the internet, but if you're taking it in a supplement form in the wintertime, which most people need to, and also if you're a person of color, you need more vitamin D, higher vitamin D supplementation than other people. But vitamin D can affect energy levels, it can affect mood, and it can help to thwart or soften maybe depression, especially in the wintertime. There were studies done on depression and vitamin D. What they found was low vitamin D levels were prominent in the lowest quartile of these studies that had the highest prevalence of depression. So this isn't actually a story of causation, like one causes the other. The studies are showing correlation. So they found that this, low vitamin D, is correlated with a high prevalence of depression. And that's why vitamin D supplementation may help with depression. What can help with depression? As I said, sunshine or vitamin D supplementation. But do a little more research, especially if you're experiencing depression, and best to talk to a health professional. Sunshine makes a difference in several things: mood, attitude, outlook, energy, immunity, and of course, overall health. So even though it's cold out, go and get some sun. Air. Research shows, so I'm going to talk a little bit about weight loss and about the sympathetic nervous system. Research shows that regularly practicing breathing exercises may be linked to increased weight loss and reduced body fat. There's actually a type of breathing, a study that was done, and the type of breathing is called Shinobi breathing. Shinobi, S-E-N-O-B-I, Shinobi breathing. This was done in a study in Japan where the participants were, I think they were pre-diabetic obese women over the age of 50, if I'm right. Don't quote me on that. The study's out there on the internet. And they just breathed. They did a breathing and stretching. They'd stretch and breathe in and bring their hands down, breathe out. Stretch and breathe in, bring their hands down, breathe out. They did that for about 1 minute, which is around 3 stretches, and then sat down to eat. And the other group did no stretching or breathing and sat down to eat, eating the same thing. And the group that did the Shinobi breathing lost weight, and the other group didn't, just by breathing. Well, this kind of connects with what I was saying earlier, because they found that they were in a more parasympathetic state. So they're in rest and digest. They're digesting their food better, and this led to more weight loss and reduced body fat just from breathing. There's a simple exercise that you can do. Breathing, of course, it's better if you do it outside. You want to go outside and get that beautiful fresh air away from a highway or cars, preferably. But there's something that you can do, a type of breathing that helps with stress management. And we're going to take a moment to do it together now. But as I'd mentioned before, you could do the breathing before you ate. The most important thing is that you're exhaling for a little longer than inhaling. So let's do a breathing exercise together. It helps with stress management, and it helps to put you in a more restful state. It's actually something you can do right before bed if you have difficulties falling asleep. So you can look at the blue ball. It's also what you can do before you eat as well. Breathing to lose weight. Here we go. I think. No? Okay, everybody breathe in. Hold it. Breathe out. Long exhalation out the mouth. And now, breathe in. Hold it. Long exhalation out the mouth. We'll do one more. Everybody's going to be ready to go to sleep now. Breathe in. Hold it. Long exhalation out the mouth. There you go. Does everyone feel really relaxed now? It works, right? But don't fall asleep. Don't fall asleep, because I think we've got about maybe 10 more minutes to go. They've also found this with breathing. This was from the 2018 Journal of Physical Therapy Science. And they were looking at a type of breathing called diaphragmatic breathing. And they found that doing this type of breathing, diaphragm breathing, that type of breathing exercise could influence RMR, which is your resting metabolic rate, which means basically you're going to burn more calories when you're at rest just by doing this type of breathing. I'm not saying don't go out and do the exercise and eat properly, but if you want your metabolism to be, let's say, revving a little faster, then you can breathe in a way, but still go out and exercise and pay attention to your food intake and nutrition. The effects of breathing exercises on resting metabolic rate and maximal oxygen uptake. And what they found was breathing exercises can increase your resting metabolic rate and increase your maximal oxygen uptake, which can also help with better circulation. So go outside and get some air. He's getting some air and he looks really, really happy. But instead, you want to go outside like this and get some air, and if possible, Actually, if you're breathing near the ocean, which might not be an option for us, you're breathing like the ionization from the salt water is really fantastic as well. But breathe outside somewhere where even a lake or nature, you're surrounded by that instead of cars, and you're getting some really nice fresh air. This is actually a picture that I'm going to show you from that study that I was talking about, the Snowy breathing study in Japan. And this is, oops, okay, not that one. Whoops. Okay, the Snowy breathing exercise. In this study, they said it was recommended as a first-line treatment for obesity, and this is not what they had to do before eating. It actually looked more like that. So they stretched and then brought their arms down. And they found that there was a decrease in sympathetic nerve activity. Basically, they got out of the sympathetic nervous system and into a rested state. It was obese women who were 40 to 50 years old. A significant loss of body fat after just 1 month. They did it before every meal, and they ate 3 meals a day. So breathing can do a lot more for us than we think. Stretch and breathe before you eat. Even if you're not doing it for weight loss, it can help you to put you in a better state for digestion. Okay, everyone here sees the word sleep on the screen, but I'm telling you, don't fall asleep. We're going to end by talking about sleep and then one more very important thing. When we're talking about sleep and maintaining a healthy weight, not a lot of people put these two things together, that maybe it's difficult to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight because I'm not getting enough sleep. Most people are thinking diet and exercise. People's sleep requirements vary, but generally speaking, research has observed changes in weight when people get fewer than 7 hours of sleep a night. A major review found that short sleep duration increased the likelihood of obesity by 89% in children and 55% in adults. I might be saying sleep a lot, but don't sleep. Stay awake. However, if you're not getting a lot of sleep, you might feel like this when it comes to exercise. So sleep affects us in so many ways. A lack of sleep decreases our motivation to exercise. You know you want to exercise and be consistent, but you are tired because you're not getting high quality sleep. So we will talk about some tips on how to improve sleep. We might not realize it, but sleep's affecting our food choices as well. Poor sleep can increase your calorie intake by increasing late night snacking. And I said for better digestion, go light at night. But if you're not getting a lot of sleep, you might actually do this. It affects our portion size because it affects the hormones, ghrelin and leptin, that control hunger and fullness. So you might eat more and more and more, and it's like I'm just not getting full. But really, it's because you're tired, and you're not getting enough sleep, and you're not sensitive to the fullness hormone, leptin, and you're more sensitive to the hunger hormone, ghrelin. It affects our time available to start the day off with a nutritious breakfast. We might end up going to Tim Hortons and getting a coffee and bagel or donut or muffin because we didn't have enough time, we were tired, we hit the snooze button, and then we're running out the door. So poor sleep affects us in so many ways. But in order to understand the tips I'm going to give on sleep, it's important to understand what happens when we sleep, which I'll go through very quickly. I was always curious about this as a kid. What is happening when I'm sleeping? Because it's like you wake up and it's a whole new world. What just happened for the last 8 hours? What really happens when we sleep? So we go through different stages when we sleep. I'm sure you've heard of REM, the sleep stage, not the band. But it is one of the sleep stages. Basically, when you're falling asleep, you go through stage 1, which is called light sleep. I won't go through everything that's on this slide, But REM sleep is the sleep stage that most people know about, but the truth is you only spend 25% of your sleep time in REM. 75% of your sleep time is in non-REM sleep. REM is rapid eye movement. Basically, you go through 4 stages. This is according to the National Sleep Foundation. They now refer to it as 3 stages. We learned 4. You start with light sleep. This is called N1. And this is the stage where people can go through these jerks. They're called hypnic myoclonia. Basically, where you might jump a little bit. And that just means that you're in light sleep. You're between light sleep and falling asleep, between wake and sleep. Why does that happen? It could happen if you've had alcohol, too much caffeine, you're exercising near bedtime. But it also happens if you're stressed, or if you have you're feeling anxious. So you'll jump a little bit before you fall down. You don't fall down. Before you fall into the next stage of sleep, called N2. N2 is also non-REM. It's a period of light sleep, and you kind of hover there before you drop down into deep, deep sleep. In this second stage, your heartbeat and your breathing slow, your muscles relax, your body temperature drops, eye movements stop completely. Brainwave activity slows down, and there are little bursts of activity. You spend more time in the repeated sleep cycle here in stage 2 than in other stages. And after this, you go into deep sleep. And deep sleep is what you really, really need if you are healing or if you are looking for recovery or restoration. You want to get as much deep sleep as possible. This period of deep sleep is what you need to feel refreshed in the morning. This is where sleep is the deepest and most restorative. And this is important because you will spend more time in deep sleep earlier in the night. So this is a vote for going to bed early. For example, going to bed at 10 p.m. because for those first 4 hours, you'll drop down from stage 1, stage 2, and then into deep sleep, and then REM, and go back. You keep going through this cycle every 90 minutes. So sleep isn't just one state the entire time. You're cycling through each stage every 90 minutes throughout the entire night. So if you wake up and you go to the bathroom, you don't just drop into deep sleep. You're back to stage number 1, and you're going to cycle through. And then you wake up, go to the bathroom for a second time, back to stage 1. So you don't want to do anything that will disrupt your sleep. This is why I didn't say this with water, but this is why to improve sleep, I always recommend cutting off all liquids about 3 to 4 hours before bedtime. No liquids. And this way you are not going to most likely wake up to go to the bathroom. But basically this deep sleep happens more early in the night. So you go to bed, you go from stage 1, stage 2, you drop into deep sleep early in the night, you hover there and stay there, and then you go to REM and you go back up. But once you hit deep sleep, you stay there for longer earlier in the night. But later in the night, you're going to go from deep sleep to REM, and then you stay there for longer, and then you go back up and you stay in REM for longer. So you want to make sure you're going to bed early, especially if healing is your goal, so you will spend more time in deep sleep. Later in the night, it's a bit too late. You will spend more time in REM sleep than you will in deep sleep later in the night. 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you're moving more into REM. You still drop into deep sleep, but you're not going to hover and stay there. You will actually stay in REM for longer. So what is REM sleep? Just letting you know if you didn't read it, during deep sleep, blood pressure drops, muscles repair, tissue growth happens, there's regeneration of proteins happening, a lot of growth hormone is being released. So all of these magnificent things that are part of healing happen there in the deep sleep. There's something else that happens. Blood pressure drops in deep sleep. So if you're someone who has high blood pressure, then you'd want to, one of the things that can help is actually getting more sleep earlier in the night, because blood pressure drops when you're in deep sleep, but blood pressure tends to get higher in REM sleep later in the night. blood pressure is nearly the same level as when you're waking. So REM sleep, 25% of the night. The first REM stage is about 90 minutes after falling asleep. Basically, this is when you're dreaming and your muscles are turned off, so you're not acting out your dreams. Memory consolidation happens in REM sleep. It also happens a little bit in non-REM sleep, but it's both. So you want to get a lot of REM sleep so you'll have a really good, ongoingly good memory. This entire thing I just described is called the sleep cycle. And we go through several of these sleep cycles every night. So sleep is not just one state. It's several stages. And the amount of time we spend in each stage depends on what time of night it is. So you might then ask, okay, then what is the best time to sleep? As I said, if you want to get, let's say, the best of all worlds, it would be better to go to bed earlier. Let's say around 10 p.m. And then from 10 to 2, you're going to spend more time hovering in deep sleep. And then from 2 until 6, you spend more time hovering in REM sleep. And then you're getting great memory consolidation, great tissue repair. You get everything. So I usually recommend 10 to 6. And then most people will say, I can't go to bed at 10 o'clock. So instead, I'm like 10:30 to 6:30. And that's kind of a negotiation. But you might target 2 hours before midnight. There are several other reasons why, but we don't have enough time for me to explain all the reasons why those times, including that secretion of melatonin is really ramping up at that time. So you're going to fall asleep easier. But just for the benefits of what happens in the body during sleep, that's a good target time and a good wake time. I'll kind of skip over a few things. And I'll just get to this slide before we get to our final point. This slide is my kind of Coles Notes, or you might say, what's that other company? Coles is Canadian. Cliff Notes. Cliff Notes, I think, is what we used to say at seminary because it's American. But the Cliff Notes on sleep. Number 1, you want to sleep in a fully dark room. First of all, this person's doing the wrong thing. Drinking right before bed. No. She's going to have to wake up to use the bathroom. Sleep in a fully dark room. Why? Because your brain secretes melatonin, which is the sleep hormone, based on darkness. And when there's light, your brain will not secrete as much melatonin. And these things, computers, devices, iPads, telephones, etc., they secrete blue light. Blue light cuts off the secretion of melatonin. Melatonin is actually a natural anti-cancer hormone as well. So you want to get as much melatonin as possible. It has so many benefits, and not only just helps you to sleep. As a matter of fact, I'm writing an article in a magazine in Toronto that I write for every month. I haven't been writing as much in the last few months, but it's on the benefits of melatonin. It goes so far beyond just helping us sleep. So you want to get as much melatonin secretion as possible. In order to do that, you remove the things that affect melatonin, which is light, and especially blue light from devices, light from even a clock radio or something like that. You might think it's just a little red light. It's still going through the eyelids and hitting the retina. Sleep in a fully dark room so you get a full dosing of melatonin every night. It will help you to fall asleep. Number 2, always go to sleep and wake up at the same time. Why? This way you're setting your body's physiological clock called the circadian rhythm. Then all of the hormones will be secreted kind of on time. On time meaning you get the cortisol to give you energy when you need energy, not at night when you're trying to wind down. You get boosts of testosterone during the day, earlier in the day when you need a little more power. And so everything is secreted at the time where it's going to work best for you. Number 3, do not drink liquids within 4 hours of bedtime. Like this person, a lot of people like a little sip of hot tea before bed. I would say it's a no-no, because usually those people end up waking up, if not within 2 hours, somewhere between 2 and 4.5 hours later, they go to use the bathroom, and they think that that's like innocuous. But as we've just gone through the entire discussion on what happens when we sleep, you know you're breaking up your sleep cycle. And you don't just go right back into deep sleep. You have to go right back to stage 1. So avoid any liquids within 3 to 4 hours of bedtime to ensure, usually, that you're not going to wake up to break up the sleep cycle. If you can make it till 6 o'clock and you wake up and go straight to the bathroom, awesome. You still got a full night's sleep that was not disrupted. Number 4, sleep in a clean room and turn the thermostat slightly down before bed. Why? I've heard the saying, messy room, messy mind. We don't want our brain thinking of all the things that are piled on the desk, etc. when we're going to bed. Turn the thermostat slightly down before bed, because during one of the sleep cycles, actually our body temperature drops. Also, melatonin, which is secreted by the pineal gland in the brain, causes your body temperature to drop as well. So perhaps just falling asleep, you might not like it to be cool, but you will sleep better, and your body is cooler naturally during sleep. So you want to turn the thermostat down a little bit. For me, I actually sometimes have the heat on a little bit right before bed, and then I turn it off so I can fall asleep, and then I know it's going to be cold, and that's going to go with my body temperature. But I like to be a little cozy just as I'm falling asleep. Number 5, exercise regularly, but not too soon before bed. Right before bed, you're actually causing your cortisol to go high. You'll be alert and feel great, but it will probably cause a longer sleep onset, also known as insomnia. Number 6, the bedroom should only be used for 2 things, sleeping and intimacy. Why do I say that? Because your brain works on routines and memory. If your bedroom is also your office, and you've got a treadmill and some weights in there, the bedroom's the gym, and then you go to sleep and your brain is like, okay, it's time to think about work. No, I should have exercised today. But really, you just want to be thinking about sleep. Number 7, no electronics or blue lights within an hour before bedtime. As I said, this device gives off blue light, which causes the secretion of melatonin to be affected. And it's going to cut off melatonin secretion, and therefore it affects sleep. Number 8, avoid caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, which interfere with sleep. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep, which is associated with memory consolidation and emotional well-being. It also increases snoring, which can cause you to wake up or bother your partner. And alcohol might help you fall asleep, but it causes disrupted sleep, so you won't sleep as well. Number 9, as I said, get outside for 30 minutes in the morning. It actually helps you to sleep at night. It's setting the circadian rhythm for the day. Cortisol becomes low right before bedtime. Number 10, no napping. A lot of people like to nap during the day. Why? I would say 30 minutes if it's absolutely needed, but the reason why is it often affects sleep at night. You nap during the day, you're not sleeping at night, and then your sleep time gets pushed back to, okay, now it's midnight. So no napping unless absolutely needed. And also establish a de-stressing, calming pre-bedtime routine. You want to be nice and calm before bed. You might consider using a little bit of lavender essential oil, which is helpful to help us fall asleep, or putting it in a diffuser, turning the lights down or changing from the overhead lights to lamps. And it's just doing the same thing again and again. Your brain knows, okay, we're getting ready for bedtime. And those are all of the recommendations for sleep. As I'm wrapping up now, I would say that this is very important. There's one key to better health, and that key is consistency. And as I started this talk off, I said, with the Lord, all things are possible. So God can help you to be consistent. So this is the final thing that I will talk about for a moment about better health, and it is this. I said, with the Lord, all things are possible, and it's trust in the Creator. Trust in the Creator as you make lifestyle changes, as you go on the journey to healing and better health. And I love this Bible verse, which says in Romans 12, verse 2, don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. So I hope that this presentation has helped you to change the way that you think about your health, about water, about nutrition, about sunshine, about grocery shopping, about sugar. And finally, I'm going to end with a few Bible verses, just suggesting that you go outside to look at God's creation and his beauty, because that can be very healing as well. There's a Bible verse that says in 1 John 4:18, there's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out all fear. Fear causes the nervous system to go into a fight or flight state, which is stress. We want to be in a rest and digest state, which is more towards peace. So we can call on God because he is love, and that love casts out fear. Philippians 4:6 says, in terms of stress, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. There's so many studies that are proving all of these things, prayer and gratitude. Let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and minds. He gives us a beautiful exchange. We give him our anxiety, our supplications, and we're still thankful, and he exchanges with us and gives us peace. And I'll end with this final Bible passage, which is this. I was like, is it there? The final Bible passage has come and gone, and it was Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. God knows the plans. We know the plans that God has for us. He says, I think, I'll just say it. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. There are plans of peace. There are plans for good and not for disaster. Plans to give you a future and a hope. So God has great plans for us. Let's trust in the Creator as we go on our own personal health journeys towards better and greater health. Thank you, everyone. Actually, I used up most of the time, but does anyone have any questions? Yes, go ahead. Yes. Right. It's interesting because there's so many different opinions and different things to talk about when it comes to water. First of all, this water is in a plastic bottle. I mean, I'm drinking it, but it's in plastic, which means it's possible that some of the plastic, the properties of the plastic, unless it's non-BPA, they've leached into the water, which can affect our hormones, especially estrogen, and affect women. So if you're drinking water, it's better to drink it out of glass. And then there are chemicals in the water, so it's a question of either the best waters to get. I drink distilled water, or I drink reverse osmosis water, or I might drink Kangen water. My mom has a filter. But I normally don't necessarily drink spring water. I'm not sure, is it really spring water? What are the minerals that are still left in the water, etc.? I have heard putting a pinch of Himalayan salt in the water can be good just to help your sodium levels, but then I don't recommend that for people who have high blood pressure. So that's generally it. But if possible, as I said, I mean, this is plastic that might not be recycled, etc. So drink your water out of a glass bottle, which I'm not doing at the moment. Any other questions? Yes. Right. It's interesting about alkaline water because there are studies that are pro and studies that are against. And I haven't really done enough research on the studies. I have talked to doctors pro and against alkaline water, so I can't say that I'm really sure. Yes.
Well, two questions. The first one is, how long you do boiled tap water from your house?
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine, but I know there's so many different types of water that you sell in the store.
Yeah.
I grew up just boiling the water.
So boiling water will kill the microbes in the water, but it won't necessarily remove the heavy metals in the water or the other contaminants in the water. So reverse osmosis would do that. But if you're boiling the water, at least the live bacteria and microbes in the water would be killed. Yeah. Yeah. Right. B12. I mean, I think we naturally swallow it, but your body does produce B12 when you're sleeping. I don't know if it's enough B12, but yes, it is there in the mouth when you wake up. Yeah, go ahead.
My question is regarding napping. Not that I nap a lot. I'm a little confused because years past, I always heard that if you sleep 1 hour before midnight, it's worth 2 or 3.
Yes, right. Well, when you're sleeping before midnight, that's part of the reason I said go to bed at 10. You're sleeping before midnight. I don't know if I'd say it's worth 2 hours, but you are spending more time in the restorative sleep. Because after midnight, up until about 2 a.m., after that, you're shifting more to spending more time in REM sleep. So if you go to bed, let's say 2 hours before midnight, you're actually getting more of a restorative sleep than if you went to bed at midnight and then you're waking up at, let's say, 8. You're missing out on that window where your body's going to hover in deep sleep for longer. So I don't know exactly about the equation, but yes, the benefit is you get more deep sleep. Yeah. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes, Sister Tulloch? Or Mom? Oh. I did write a book, which I have with me, which I forgot to put out. But I wrote a book called Authentic You, a step-by-step journey to the habits beyond dieting. So my book is about establishing healthy habits and having a better relationship with food and getting to the point of having a sustainable, healthy weight. So that's what my book is about. But Asia, I lived in Asia for 6 years. And during my 6 years in Asia, I noticed people ate differently there. People tended to be more slender. There was less type 2 diabetes. There's less obesity, less high blood pressure. They've even done studies and found that there was less cancer in women there. So I didn't know all of those things. I just knew what I could see, and that people seemed to be really energetic. And so I started noticing what they were eating and how they were eating and taking notes. That was over 20 years ago, and so I put that information into my book. The interesting thing is now they're doing studies on things like intermittent fasting, and a lot of the things that I noticed, they are now part of studies and practices. So I put the studies on those things that I learned in the book as well. So it's part fiction, the story of a girl who travels looking for the answers, and part science. You're welcome. Yes?
If you have a dream from God,
Oh my.
or you think it's from God,
Okay.
let's say if you have a dream, what stage of sleep was that?
Okay. So we actually do more of our dreaming during REM. So we spend 25% of our sleep stage in REM. REM is, you're dropping into REM all the time. So REM is the final place that you're going to drop into before you go back to stage number 1. But you spend more time in REM later in the night. So you're most likely dreaming a little more later in the night. I don't know about the dreams being from God, etc., but it would be most likely later in the night. Does that answer your question? Do you want an exact time?
No, it's just that I feel in the mornings, at least I'm aware more of my dreams.
Right. So in the mornings is later in the night. I mean, like the second half of the night. Let's say if you're sleeping until 6, it would be sometime between 2 or 3 and 6 a.m. That's when you're doing a lot of your dreaming. And this is why some people might feel like, oh, I was just dreaming. I just woke up out of my dream, because you're spending more time in REM closer to waking time. Yep. Go ahead. You. Oh, you. The fellow at the back with the glasses. Okay. Okay. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I use fasting as a tool. It's something that I've regularly used more for my weight loss patients, but just as an introduction to a day of rest for the body. So I would have them eat on my particular meal plan, which was plant-based, original foods, no sugars, etc. 2 meals, primarily light at night, 4 to 5 hours between. Everything we talked about here is basically what I put in my meal plans. But then on Wednesdays were a fasting day. So halfway through the week. And then on that day, they either did an OMAD fast. OMAD means 1 meal a day. So they would either just eat 1 meal, which was primarily vegetables, like salads, in the middle of the day. So they're fasting before and fasting after. Or it was a day of juicing. And the juices are predominantly vegetable juice, juicing throughout the day, and sometimes water fasting. But with the water fasting, you just have to be careful with the water fasting, and then if someone has a high blood pressure, you want to be careful that their blood pressure is not dropping too low, or blood sugar issues, etc. So I always, at least with my patients, I'm always checking in on their health, blood sugar levels, blood pressure levels before I recommend a fasting day. But usually when everything's okay, a regular fasting day in the middle of the week, and it's a detox day where they're doing juices only, or they're doing water only, or if they feel like, wow, that's just too much, 1 meal only, which is a big salad. Once a week. I myself fasted. I have to admit that I don't do it as much now, but I used to fast every Wednesday. So same kind of thing, once a week, and Wednesdays were my juicing day. So, yeah. Okay. Like a juicing machine. Because that removes all of the fiber, and then the juice is getting into your system faster. Yes? Sugar added?
Not only that, the actual the wheat, it's not the original wheat, it's been altered in the laboratory. What do you say about that?
I recommend, believe it or not, don't recommend a lot of bread. It's generally a carbohydrate that is converted into glucose pretty quickly. But if people say, I want to eat bread, then I say stay away from the store-bought bread because it has sugar and a lot of chemicals in it. You can make the bread at home. And also choose, it'd be great if you got your own starter and you made your own sourdough bread from a starter itself. I think that's okay. And a lot of people, even people who have gluten sensitivities, tend to not react as much to homemade sourdough bread from a starter. Yeah. Go ahead. Oh. Sure. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So when I was studying in China at the health center, even when I went to AUP, the Adventist University of the Philippines, because it was so hot, sometimes I'd go out with most of my friends there actually were Korean, because I was living with a group of Korean girls, and I'd drink cold bubble tea. The cold bubble tea, though, which is popular here. When I lived in Asia, I drank hot bubble tea. And they'd be like, Nadine, you can't drink that. No cold water. It's not good for the stomach. The general principle is that it can either affect hydrochloric acid levels, or your body has to work so hard to kind of warm that water up so that it's at a warmer temperature for the body. So in order to avoid the body having to work that hard, then you take water which is room temperature. And those are the general ideas why. I think people like the cold water because it tends to relieve thirst, or you're already hot, so you drink cold. Even in the wintertime, though, I don't know that many people who drink cold water, but some people might. Yeah, everything's cold. Yeah. Right. Yeah. What's funny is I taught English in Taiwan in 1997. I know, you're thinking you were there and you were like 5 years old. How's that possible? But I remember being it was my first year there, and I was in the South, really, really, really hot. And I went, and I used to always drink cold water. And I went to the water fountain in the school, and I was like, oh, I can't wait till break till I get some water. Took a huge sip, spat it out literally in front of the kids and the other teachers, like, what is that? And another teacher who'd been there for a while laughed at me and said, oh, I guess you're not accustomed to the tepid water in the water fountains. So even the water in the water fountains was warm and hot because they didn't want the kids drinking cold water. Yeah. Took me a while to get accustomed to that. Are there any other questions? Did you have a question? About the bread? Yes. Okay. Mm. Okay. Yes. You can have the stone ground bread. Are you gluten sensitive? Okay. Great. Oh, I don't, it's amazing the way that gluten-free products have taken off, but it doesn't mean they're healthy. And sometimes they don't taste great either. But now people think these two things are synonymous, gluten-free and healthy. But you still want to look at the product itself. Yeah, I like the Ezekiel bread. Yeah. I think we'll have one more question, and then we're going to end with a prayer. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Yep, I drink distilled water. I mentioned, yeah. Okay. I think we'll end. I wish I could stay here and we'd answer questions and continue to answer questions, but I actually have to get on the highway. So we're going to end with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord Jesus, thank you for such an amazing day. Lord, you are so good. You know the plans that you have for us. I just pray and ask, Lord, that you'll be with each person here. I'm praying for traveling mercies for everyone who's traveling. Please help us, Lord, in each of the ways that we need to improve and change in our health. Give us the endurance, the knowledge, the motivation, and the desire. And we give you thanks and praise, and we say these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Have an amazing night, everybody.